How did you meet your husband or your wife? Could a single act of kindness truly alter the course of a person's heart? Could a misplaced wallet in a dusty taxi become the unlikely spark that redraws two destinies, mine and his, into the same breathtaking story? I never believed love could slip into a life the way accidents do, unplanned and unapologetic. Yet here I am, Isolde Moreau, telling a tale that began not with roses or candlelight, but with suspicion, raised voices, and a man who thought I was a thief. How could he have known that the woman standing before him, frustrated, insulted, and moments away from walking out of his life, was the very same woman fate was gently nudging him toward? And how could I have known that the apology he offered 2 days later, timid and unsure, would become the first thread in a bond neither of us could untangle? From one moment of pure civic duty came a cascade of calls, confessions, and connections, until the man who once doubted my intentions became the very person my heart had been unknowingly searching for. Love, as it turns out, doesn't always arrive gracefully. Sometimes it crashes into your life disguised as a misunderstanding, only to reveal itself as the most beautiful twist of all. Part 1. The Misunderstanding and the Accusation. The rain that evening in Paris was a theatrical deluge, painting the cobblestone streets with slick, shimmering reflections of the city lights. I, a stickler for order by nature, had just finished a late shift, my mind still cataloging forgotten literary heroes. As my taxi pulled up to my apartment building, the driver, a cheerful man named Jean-Pierre, hopped out to open my door, a small kindness I always appreciated. It was then, nestled between the worn leather of the seat and the door frame, that I spotted it, a wallet, fat with currency, and the promise of inconvenience. Its rich, dark leather looked expensive, and a quick peek inside confirmed my suspicions. A significant stack of euros, and what looked like a collection of high-end credit cards, along with a driver's license. My immediate, unthinking reaction was to do the right thing. Jean-Pierre, I announced, holding up the forgotten item, someone has left their wallet. He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Ah, mademoiselle, not again. Always the hurried tourists. You are a kind soul, Isolde. Perhaps it is best if you contact the owner yourself, as I am already late for my next fare across the city. He scribbled a number on a napkin, his dispatch service, and promised to pass on my details if the owner called him directly. With a weary but understanding nod, I agreed. I took the wallet inside, carefully laying it on my pristine antique desk. My plan was simple: find a contact number, call the owner, and arrange for its safe return. It was a minor detour in my evening, but a necessary one. That's when I saw the name on the driver's license, a strong, almost imperious-sounding name, accompanied by a rather stern-looking photograph of a man with dark, intense eyes and a jawline that suggested he was not accustomed to inconvenience. His address, conveniently, was just a few blocks from mine. It was fate, I decided, or at least geographical convenience. I quickly decided against calling and chose the more direct approach: deliver it in person. It would be faster, more secure, and less prone to miscommunication. A simple ring of the doorbell, a quick exchange, and I could be back to my book and a cup of soothing chamomile tea. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, it turned out, could go wrong. The rain had momentarily ceased, leaving the air damp and heavy with the scent of wet earth. His building was a grand, imposing structure, its wrought iron gates standing like silent sentinels. I rang the bell for the designated apartment, the heavy, resonant chime echoing in the stillness. A moment later, a terse, almost irritated voice barked through the intercom. Yes? Bonjour, I began, my politeness a practiced art. My name is Isolde Moreau. I found your wallet in a taxi this evening, and I believe it belongs to you. There was a beat of silence, then a low, incredulous laugh that sent a shiver down my spine. My wallet? The voice retorted, laced with an unsettling blend of suspicion and derision. And you, mademoiselle, are here to return it? Before I could respond, the heavy security door buzzed open, and I stepped into a lavish foyer, richly decorated with tapestries and marble. He was waiting at the door to his apartment, the man from the driver's license, only far more imposing in person. He was tall, his dark suit tailored to perfection, his intense eyes now narrowed, scrutinizing me with the cold, unyielding gaze of a prosecutor. He was easily a decade older than my 33 years, radiating an aura of severe authority that made me feel suddenly like a schoolgirl caught skipping class. "Let me see it," he demanded, his voice devoid of any civility. I held out the wallet, a gesture of honesty, an offering of goodwill. He snatched it from my hand, his fingers brushing mine with a surprising jolt. He opened it, his dark eyes scanning the contents, his jaw ticking. Then his head snapped up, his gaze locking onto mine with the force of a physical blow. "My cash," he stated, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Where is my cash?" My blood ran cold. The accusation hung in the opulent air between us, a foul, unexpected stench. "What are you talking about?" I managed, my voice suddenly thin, fragile. "I found it just as it was. I simply wanted to return it." He laughed again, a short, bitter sound that held no humor. "Save your theatrics, mademoiselle. There was considerably more money in here than this. You expect me to believe you, a stranger, appeared at my door purely out of the goodness of your heart, with my substantially lighter wallet?" His eyes, those intense, dark pools, were filled with suspicion, accusing me of a transgression I had not committed. My face flushed with a furious indignation that burned hotter than any fever. I, a woman who prided herself on her integrity, was being accused of theft by this arrogant, distrustful stranger. "How dare you?" I spat, my voice rising, abandoning all decorum. "I went out of my way, in the pouring rain, to bring you your property, and you accuse me of being a common thief?" He simply stared at me, his expression unmoved, a chilling testament to his conviction. "My property is not fully returned," he countered, his voice like flint striking stone. "Good evening, mademoiselle. I suggest you leave. Now." The heavy apartment door swung shut with a resounding thud, leaving me standing alone in the lavish foyer, my heart pounding like a frantic drum, my righteous fury simmering into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I had never been so insulted in my entire life, and I swore then and there I would never forget the man with the cold, accusing eyes and the missing cash. Part 2. The unending apologies and the unforeseen connection. The shame and outrage of that night clung to me for the next 2 days like a persistent, unwelcome shadow. Every time I thought of his accusing gaze, his arrogant dismissal, my blood boiled anew. My civic duty had been repaid with insult, my honesty with suspicion. I had even considered calling Jean-Pierre, the taxi driver, to recount the absurd incident, but the sheer humiliation of it kept me silent. I was Isolde Moreau, a woman of unblemished reputation, and the idea that anyone, especially this imperious stranger, could believe me capable of theft was a bitter pill to swallow. I tried to push the entire repulsive encounter from my mind, burying myself in the comforting routines of my library work, finding solace in the quiet stacks of books and the logical order of Dewey Decimal. Then, precisely 2 days later, my phone, usually a tool for scheduled appointments and polite conversations, rang with an unfamiliar number. My initial instinct was to ignore it, assuming it was a telemarketer. But something, a flicker of intuition, or perhaps just a morbid curiosity, made me answer. "Mademoiselle Moreau?" A deep, resonant voice filled my ear, familiar in its tone, yet now laced with an unmistakable tremor of something akin to genuine distress. It was him, the man from the driver's license, the man who had accused me of being a thief. My breath hitched. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice immediately on guard. "This is Alaric Dubois," he stated, his voice a low rumble, devoid of its earlier arrogance, now tinged with an almost startling vulnerability. My mind immediately registered the name. Alaric Dubois. My internal alarm bells, which had only just quieted from our last encounter, flared back to life. "Ah, Monsieur Dubois," I replied, my tone dripping with icy politeness. "To what do I owe the dubious pleasure of this call?" There was a heavy sigh on the other end, a sound that conveyed a profound sense of self-reproach. "Mademoiselle Moreau," he began, his voice now a torrent of earnest contrition, "I owe you the most profound, the most absolute apology. I have made a terrible, unforgivable mistake, a monumental misjudgment of character." He paused, as if gathering his thoughts, then continued. "My assistant, a rather efficient but sometimes overly zealous young man, found my missing cash this morning. It had slipped between the lining of my briefcase. I had simply overlooked it in my haste that evening. My accusations, my behavior towards you, were utterly baseless, abhorrent, and born of my own carelessness. There is no excuse for my appalling conduct." The words poured out of him, each one a meticulous brick in the wall of his apology. He wasn't just apologizing. He was dissecting his mistake, analyzing it, presenting it with a level of detail that, had it not been about my character assassination, I might have found impressive. My initial fury, which had surged back to life at the sound of his voice, now began to slowly, grudgingly, recede, replaced by a bewildering mix of vindication and a strange, unfamiliar curiosity. "You found it," I stated, the words leaving my mouth as a quiet triumph. "So you admit your accusation was entirely unfounded?" "More than unfounded, mademoiselle," he insisted, his voice heavy with self-condemnation. "It was an insult to your integrity, a profound error on my part that I deeply, truly regret. I was rash, I was tired, I was utterly, inexcusably wrong." He offered to send flowers, a gift basket, anything to atone for his behavior. I declined. The idea of accepting anything from him, even as an apology, felt like a concession. But then, he did something entirely unexpected. He asked if he could call me again. "I understand if you never wish to speak to me again," he said, his voice tinged with a genuine sadness. "But I feel a profound need to demonstrate my remorse, to prove that I am not the arrogant, suspicious man you met that evening." My logical mind, usually a bastion of reason, was completely at a loss. This was unprecedented. No one had ever been so persistent, so earnestly contrite. Against all my better judgment, against every instinct that screamed danger, retreat, I found myself saying, "Perhaps, Monsieur Dubois, you could send a truly sincere apology without the threat of a floral arrangement." And he did. He called the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. His calls became a daily ritual, a persistent, gentle presence that slowly, subtly, began to chip away at my initial repulsion. He wasn't just apologizing for the wallet anymore. He was apologizing for his initial impression, for his general gruffness, for his life being too structured, for not appreciating kindness, for almost everything under the Parisian sun. He started sending me witty anecdotes about his own daily frustrations, asking genuinely thoughtful questions about my work at the library, confessing his own secret love for classic detective novels. He learned about my quiet passion for restoring antique maps, my preference for specific artisanal teas, my habit of talking to my cat as if she were a sentient being. He sent me articles related to obscure historical events we'd discussed, always with a brief, charming note. He would sometimes simply call to tell me a funny observation he'd made, a small slice of his day, offered up like a peace offering. I found myself, much to my own astonishment, looking forward to his calls, to the unexpected humor, the surprising depth, the relentless, endearing persistence of his apologies. The man who had been the epitome of repulsion had slowly, painstakingly, transformed into a fascinating, complex individual whose voice had become a strangely comforting presence in my life. He never stopped calling. And eventually, after weeks of these incessant, charming apologies, I agreed to a coffee, One cup turned into two, then three. Our conversations stretched for hours, filled with laughter and a surprising intellectual camaraderie. His intensity, once so off-putting, now felt like a magnetic force, drawing me in. He was opinionated, brilliant, and possessed a dry wit that perfectly complemented my own. The initial antagonism, the deep, burning repulsion, had been slowly, meticulously, overwritten by something entirely new, entirely unexpected, and entirely, intoxicatingly real. And it all began with a lost wallet, a furious accusation, and a man who simply wouldn't stop apologizing until he had not just earned my forgiveness, but somehow, inexplicably, earned my heart. How did you meet your husband or your wife? Let me hear your wild stories in the comments section.